I like all kinds of categories of music, and one of the categories of music that I like listen to is country. But like more of the modern country. Father Mike, on the other hand, is a purist, and he will only listen to the old country western stuff. So I'll be walking by his room, and blaring out of his room is Johnny Cash. I like to expand my horizons and listen to some of the newer stuff. And in fact, when I was growing up, one of the songs I remember is a song entitled Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks. And the lyrics go, she needs wide open spaces, room to make her big mistakes. She needs new faces. She knows the high stakes. She knows the high stakes. And I think that captures something inside of all of us. That at some point in our lives, and for some in our world today, a good number of years or all the years of their life, they're looking for wide open spaces. Meaning they're looking for fulfillment and their happiness. They're looking to find themselves out there in the world. It could be, a better job, a bigger house. It could be just every day scrolling through social media and wishing that you had this or that, or you're like him or her or whatever. But what if our satisfaction isn't to be found out there? What if it's right in front of us? And it makes me think of a story when I was growing up. I was a kid, and I remember having a candy bar, Reese's peanut butter cup, in fact. And I'd set it aside on the kitchen counter before I went to bed, thinking that when I get up in the morning and I have my bowl of Fruity Pebbles, that then I could top that off with more sugar and eat my Reese's peanut butter cup. So I get up in the morning, I go down, and I make my Fruity Pebbles, right? And then I finish that up, and I look on the kitchen counter for my Reese's peanut butter cup, but it's not there. And I grew up with 3 older sisters, okay? So that means a couple things. The first thing it means is that I never, ever won an argument. I couldn't even get a word in anyways. And they were always taking my stuff. So I thought, surely one of my sisters has taken my Reese's peanut butter cup. So I line them all up, and I do the candy bar interrogation. All right? I open up the case, and I present it to them, and only to find out that 2 of my sisters did not like Reese's peanut butter cup. I mean, who is that? Everybody likes Reese's peanut butter cups, right? So I dismissed them, and then my 3rd sister is suspiciously quiet. So I'm thinking, she's the culprit. I race up to her room, lock the door behind her so she can't get in, and I go through looking for my Reese's peanut butter cup, or evidence, a wrapper that she'd eaten it. But it was nowhere to be found. So I come out, and she hits me across the head for going in her room, and I go down to the kitchen, and now my mom has shown up. She's come from the grocery store. She's putting groceries away. She opens the cupboard, and I'm standing there, and there's my Reese's peanut butter cup. Lo and behold, it was always there right in front of me. Sometimes the things that we search high and low for in this world, they're right in front of us. And that brings me to today's gospel and this feast, the Feast of the Presentation, where Mary and Joseph appear in the temple. They bring this child Jesus, and there are two people the gospel records who immediately recognize Jesus as the Messiah. The gospel tells us that no one else recognizes him on that day but Simeon and Anna. How? What makes them different? What makes the difference, what makes them different, is they're not out searching in wide open spaces for the Messiah. They're waiting. They're waiting for him. They're waiting in prayer. They're waiting in worship. They're waiting in sacrifice. They're waiting over the years of their life in trust. And as they wait, their trust grows more and more in God's timing, not their own timing. So that when God shows up in Jesus Christ, in the Messiah, immediately they're able to see him. And I love the words of Simeon. Now, Master, this is a prayer that he prays. Now, Master, you can let your servant go in peace according to your word. For my own eyes have seen your salvation. I can't tell you how many times in my life as a priest I've been by the bedside, the deathbed of persons who have struggled maybe many years with the disease, or now are just arriving at the end of their life after living to a ripe old age. And how many times they say what Simeon says, but in more precise language, I'm ready. I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to be with God and to see all my loved ones in him. I'm ready. And these are people often in my life as a priest I get to know for many years. And indeed they are ready. And the reason why they're ready is the same reason for Simeon and Anna. They came here. They came to their parish church. And they're not out there listlessly, restlessly looking for the right thing in the wrong places. No, they come here anticipating that they're going to find God, and in fact, they do find him. Just like you this evening. Find him in his word. Find him in prayer. Find him in worship. And find him in the Eucharist. So their hearts are not restless because their hearts are resting, as St. Augustine says, in the presence of God. And that's what gets them through day by day, year by year, decade by decade. And I think the takeaway for us is a couple things. That when we wait on the Lord, rather than to go out into the world in hopes to find ourselves or find something bigger or better or more, when we wait on him, then what we learn over the years is that everything that the world promises cannot fulfill us. Only Jesus really satisfies us in this life. And then something beautiful happens. We start to learn over the years the goods that are in the world. And we don't make those goods into gods. We can enjoy the goods of relationships with people, of family, of our job. We could find God in them. We could see him in times of rest and vacation and just enjoying life, rather than the enemy, the world, the enemy presenting in the world all kinds of other gods and altars that we end up worshiping, spending so much time and energy and effort in them, and then we displace God, we miss God, we forget where we left him, like that candy bar. The other thing that happens is we learn to trust God's timing rather than our own timing. How many of us have struggled in our prayer as we pray, and often pray for important things that we want God to answer it our way, in our time, in our places. But when we do that, we really then struggle with the ability to trust in God. Yes, we could pray for so many things and should, but at the end of that prayer, of those prayers, but God, you answer it your way, in your time. I trust you. And a beautiful thing happens as we live like that over the years, is our faith in God grows and matures. So then we're not putting our faith in all the false promises of the world, but in Jesus. And the third thing happens. We start to see God in the ordinary. Mary and Joseph, seemingly ordinary people, in fact, they're bringing in a baby that looks to be ordinary, but because Simeon and Anna waited on the Lord, and they showed up at the temple on a regular basis, and they had a relationship with God of trust. As soon as Jesus walks in, Mary and Joseph carrying him, they immediately see him for who he is. And that happens to us, doesn't it? As we walk in faith and trust and waiting on the Lord and his promises, then he shows up all over the place. In nature, in relationships, in challenges and difficulties, in suffering, in the stuff that we have at our disposal that are so good and true and beautiful. He shows up in music and art and so many things in our culture because he's there. And we're not looking for something other than him. We look for him primarily in our lives, and then we see him all over the place, rather than get those things confused with God himself. And that leads me, I think, to the last point, and that is this. Stop searching. Stop searching for him. And start waiting for him. Stop searching for him and start receiving him. Like just in a few minutes, we're going to receive him in the Eucharist. In his presence, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And there is no greater way to find him. There's no more of him out there. This is the closest we're going to get to him this side of heaven. So continue to receive him. And as we receive him the way God intended it, he's the one who set up his church. He founded the Catholic Church, and he commanded, do this in memory of me and honor the Sabbath. And here we are doing that on the Vigil. We're following his commandments. We're trusting in him. And the idea behind this is that we receive him this evening, and then next week, and then the week after that, and over the years and over the decades, so that we have him. And we don't get confused by anything else other that's out there than him. And he sustains us. He satisfies us. And we receive him not just for ourselves then. This is the way he set it up. So that when we go out into the world, not only are we not confused by everything else that is a good, it might be a good, but is not a good greater than the greatest good, who is God. We go out into this world and then we start encountering other people, like among our families, like our kids or grandkids or neighbors or fellow parishioners who have lost their way. And we bring the presence of God to them. That's what Mary and Joseph were doing for Simeon and Anna. And there's a lot of people out there in wide open spaces looking to find themselves. And you've already found him. And you're about ready to receive him. And he's calling you then to take him out into the world so that through your relationships, the good of your human relationships, you can start to show them what we celebrate this day. The feast of the presentation of Jesus. He is being presented to you today, the light of the world, and he wants you to present him to everyone else in the world.